Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to a special interview with Amy Ratcliffe, the author of Star Wars: Women of the Galaxy, published by Chronicle Books and Lucasfilm. This book is incredibly special. It has over 75 fascinating female characters in it, with 18 female and non-binary artists who have produced the most wonderful art for it. Welcome, Amy!
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for accepting the invite and, most importantly, writing this amazing book. I have to say, this book, as soon as I heard it coming out, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing for me and my daughter and my son who loves Ahsoka. Like, you know, all of these people that love these characters, and really there's just not, enough focus on them. So thank you for taking the time and effort, because I know you kind of did it in your, spare time, if that exists, Amy?
Basically, yes. I definitely had some early mornings because it's funny, the deadline for my first draft coincided right about when the holiday break at my work started. So on one hand, it was like, well, at least I get it like a mini vacation as soon as I'm done. But also I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to have all these days off to write, because I was getting up 5:30, anywhere between 5 to 6 a.m. to get, a few hours done before work. So I just unfortunately write better in the mornings. I wish it was the evenings, but it is not.
Yeah, that's when you're fresher. So do you want to tell me a little bit about how it all kind of happened for you, and, how it was kind of a whirlwind, I get the impression of, from what I've read.
It definitely was. So I got, this kind of email you always dream about getting if you want to write a Star Wars book. And I very much did. Still want to write more, FYI, in case anybody is curious. And it was an email from my editor at Chronicle Books asking if I'd be interested in talking about doing a project highlighting female characters in Star Wars, which is like, duh, of course I do. That's... I wanted to write a Star Wars book. I couldn't have imagined something better than that coming across my email for my first book. And once we talked about the project, and I realized, they didn't want to just do straightforward kind of summaries of the characters, because DK Publishing writes those books already, and they're great. And character encyclopedias are wonderful that they wanted. So when I knew they wanted to do kind of a different tone, a little more like I could kind of fangirl squee and get those feelings in there, and that they were going to bring in artists to illustrate all the characters, I had just like this really great feeling about it. And I submitted samples, 3 or 4 writing samples, I think, before and gratefully they're like, yes, we can move forward with this. And from there it was definitely some finagling on getting that tone right and capturing, like, we want to give everybody, I think that's a big challenge, is making sure we had information for fans who maybe aren't familiar with these characters, and fans also who read and watch all the Star Wars they can and play with games. So it was a lot of conversations back and forth in the beginning before we kind of really started to figure out what we wanted to do. And we kind of even tweaked as we went along, but it all happened. It was really, I was in the thick of it about this time last year, but that first draft came out in about 7 weeks.
Wow.
Something I would prefer not to repeat, but I will if I need to.
If another opportunity like this one comes along that you're super passionate about, yes, please.
Yeah, exactly. Like, of course, I will make that work whatever way I need to.
It's really funny. You are a fan. You were on a podcast previously. You're, part of Nerdist, and you've written for many, I don't know, nerd titles out there. But like, you're a fan primarily, and now you're doing, what kind of all fans dream of, which is contributing to the Star Wars universe. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means to you?
It is still so surreal. Like, it got real to me once the book finally was printed and I got an advance copy, and then I'm like, this is happening. And it's just from the perspective of being a book too. I'm so used to writing for websites and the internet. I've occasionally done some print things for magazines, but it's mostly out, on the cloud, on sites, and people move through those quickly, and stories get pushed down by dozens of other stories within a few hours.
Lots of content out there.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's like, oh, this book is here and it's on my shelf and it's going to be on people's shelves. And that's like exciting and also a little terrifying. From that angle, it was weird. And then that it's Star Wars, this is something I've fangirled about for about a decade now, specifically in Star Wars, specifically Clone Wars, is kind of how I figured out that I wanted to be a writer, because I figured it out a little late in the game, but you're never too old to learn what you want to be when you grow up. And it was through talking about Clone Wars, like on Twitter and on my blog that I started at the time, that I started eventually going on this weird, bizarre, wonderful career path. So it's full circle, or the beginning of the full circle. I don't know. I don't want to say full circle because that makes it sound like it's over, but it's just kind of culminated and it's just, it's so surreal.
I think a phase of your journey has definitely come full circle because, the passion started with loving Star Wars and coming back around to contribute to Star Wars. And now the next phase is wherever you end up going next.
That's a good way to look at it. Yes, let's pretend I said that.
No, but it's very, heroine's journey in a way, because you will go through multiple heroine's journeys throughout your life.
I hope so. And I hope we continue to explore in this world, but it's just a joy and definitely a lot of, I'm like, am I really working on this? Like, am I really going to Lucasfilm for a meeting about a book that I'm writing? Like, I'm hugely excited and so grateful that Chronicle and Lucasfilm gave me the opportunity to work on this.
I can't say anything else, but it's just so cool. Like, it's just so cool that you get to do this. You talked about the Clone Wars and how it kind of started to inspire you to contribute to the Star Wars community. This blog that you started. Did you want to talk about that? Like, what got you going?
I think it was a combination of where I was in my life, right about the time Clone Wars started airing, because I didn't see the Star Wars films until I was in high school. So I saw them late in life, and that was about a decade before the Clone Wars came out. And when the animated series started, I had just right about when it happened, made a big move across the country from my very small hometown from, Ohio, and moved to Los Angeles. So a lot of life things were changing. Life in LA was much more, just lots more variety, more diversity in all kinds of ways, including I'm like, oh, like here I actually can find other geeks pretty easily. And Twitter is starting, so that's helping me do that. So kind of being more comfortable with expressing my geekdom and talking to people about things like Battlestar Galactica, like in person and outside of just my LiveJournal community, helped me open up.
Oh, LiveJournal. I've just dated myself.
Me same. I made so many user icons from Battlestar Galactica and SG-1.
Yeah, SG-1.
Yes. So, and then Clone Wars came along and I'm like, oh, I had experimented in writing about food and travel and it kind of didn't work. And then I'm like, oh, I should write about these key things that I love. That's actually perfect. And then once I fell into Clone Wars and that time period, I love the prequel era, and especially how Clone Wars kind of tied episodes 2 and 3 together and gave us more of what we kind of know is there. We know Anakin falls. We know him and Obi-Wan are really close, but I feel like the between 2 and 3 was more of the show instead of just the telling.
Yeah.
And seeing that world expanded, all the different kind of cinematography, that's not the right word, kind of film inspiration, I guess, they pulled from when they were making that. And just kind of seeing Star Wars differently through the Clone Wars made me go back and revisit the films. And I think the theme of hope and persistence is very much there in Clone Wars, but the prequel era is a little different. Well, it's a lot different than the original trilogy, but that kind of hope, that fighting against the seemingly insurmountable evil, and especially I feel like I get that, that kind of clicked with me with the original trilogy, I was like, this is big and this is very relevant to not just these huge galactic settings, but life. And so that's a theme I always come back to in Star Wars, and that inspires me the most. And that was such a roundabout way to answer your question.
No, but when Star Wars makes an impact in your life, it makes a huge impact. And then you go back and you try to figure out what it means, because at whatever time that it hit you, it meant something significant. And it could be that you never really paid attention until that moment. And we're hearing a lot of those stories with The Last Jedi, especially, you know, a lot more women are coming out of the woodwork to say, hey, you know what? I'm actually a fan.
Yes, number one. I'm a fan. And yeah, I think you're right. And I think
I'm really passionate about it.
yeah, I love this. And it definitely is something I've only learned as I've gotten older, where you are in your life and what you're going through, even like who you're surrounded by, the environment, that really affects how you perceive and how you digest stories. So it's one of my biggest arguments. If people need an argument for rewatching things, because that's probably not gonna, the show you, or the movie you loved, or maybe you didn't care about when you were 16, probably is going to mean something to you now, something different, whether it's good or bad. Because so sometimes maybe you don't want to revisit those things. Like I'm perfectly fine leaving the sheer animated series as the perfect thing that it is as my head. I don't need to go back. But sometimes it's good to revisit and like see what else like you can extract from stories.
Also, like I find Star Wars is fundamentally changes with who you experience it with. So I watch Star Wars with my kids, and that changes that experience, because then I get to kind of see it through their eyes, and that just adds.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So this book is I would say, I don't know, very unique for a Star Wars book specifically. And not only is it these, you know, in-depth stories into these characters, but also it's from a very female perspective, with you, Kathleen Kennedy, doing the foreword, the editor and publisher itself, like setting it up this way, but as well as the artists who are female and non-binary. Did you want to talk a little bit about why that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. It was something I was thrilled when Chronicle came to me with the idea. They're like, this is how we want to do it. And we want this to be created by women. My editor, of course, is a male, but my assistant editor is a woman. Mm-hmm. And they were very supportive about like this, like it was not even a question, like this is how the book should be done. And of course, I've seen some responses to the book on Twitter directed at me, because I certainly don't go searching for it because I don't have that thick of a skin or that kind of time. But, you know, like, it's sexist to have it written by all women. And it's like, well, that's a point you can take, I guess, if you want. But we've had a lot of Star Wars books and Star Wars stories, period, told by men. And if we're going to take the time to really pick these 75 female characters and go for it and celebrate them and talk about their good traits and their bad traits. And if we're just investing all this much energy, like, yeah, let women tell the story, because women will understand why the fact that we can publish a book about 75 female characters, like why that's a big deal when you look way back to Star Wars: A New Hope, and it's Leia and obviously, yeah, and like Mon Mothma, like
Mothma, yeah.
Wait, was she even? No, she wasn't in the first one.
She was in Return of the Jedi. Yeah, she didn't show up until then. So
maybe it's like that's the whole original trilogy then, and Ula.
We had like two ladies for 30 years, like. You know, so, I mean, we had some
great ladies.
Yeah, we had some like, you know, extended universe characters, of course, Mara Jade and, you know, a few others that ended up coming and now they're legends. But like, really, we did not have anything.
No, not many. And I'm grateful that for what we had. And Leia was certainly a groundbreaking character in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But that we've gotten to this point, granted, it's 40 years later, but we can have a book about that many female, and we had to leave some out. So women are going to understand more than men. Yeah. I feel like why that's important, and really like, I didn't feel like I had to hold back in any way when I'm like, this is why this person is awesome. This is why Size Noodles is actually kind of great, or whatever character.
Size Noodles. She's amazing.
She's so great. So such a devious alien.
Yes.
It's fun stuff with that. My editor, who's like, he knows Star Wars, but didn't know like stuff like that. He's like, wait, she did what? Stone cold, that Size Noodles. So I think that's why it's valuable to have women working on this all across the board.
Is it valuable for not just women? Because like some people would say, hey, okay, this is a book written by women for women. But I would argue that because you get to read from this alternative perspective, maybe it'll give you a different view, a different angle into these stories, these insights,
Yeah, I would hope so. Because I certainly wrote the book with the intention of it being for everyone, all ages, and obviously not only women. I think I like at New York Comic Con, I met some little girls who were very excited, and that of course to like grab my heart and squeeze it. But I think it's important for fans, especially ones who might want to kind of work on Star Wars or tell stories, to see this many women on a project, because it is not normally like that.
No,
like I'm like, sometimes we get half if we're lucky. If it's a project with a lot of people, but I think this is special, and I do hope that if somebody could read this who thought, hey, who thought Raising Mary Sue and comes away with it not thinking that would be super cool. That's like an extreme example, but
well, I think that the character that opened up the fandom, like for women for me, was Ahsoka. And I know that you've mentioned in previous interviews and online that Ahsoka is one of your favorite characters. Did you want to talk about, what it was like to get to kind of write for her?
Yeah, she is my favorite. She is such a remarkable character to me. And I love that we've seen now decades, we've seen maybe not quite decades, but a lot of years of her story. Well, and we're not going to do math right now. We've seen a lot of her story unfold.
We've gotten to see 2 parts of her story plus a book.
And watched her go from this sassy learner with Anakin to this kind of wise Gandalf-esque figure who's mentoring others and who seems to have all the answers. And that also gives me, I kind of grew up in my fandom with Ahsoka, that by the time when she was in Clone Wars, obviously it was not the same age, but by the time she came back in Rebels, that was, relatively close to the age I was then.
Yeah.
And that was like, yeah, we're all grown up now, Ahsoka. We did it, even though it's been a much shorter time period for me because it's only been a few years since the Clone Wars. But I think her continued selflessness and just willingness to keep trying, which is something special about a lot of these characters, and to get to kind of write about her and also write about Ashley Eckstein, who really helped me out in my early career trying to figure out what I wanted to, when I was writing and trying to get paid gigs. She was starting her universe around the same time, and I interviewed her about that, and we talked about Clone Wars, and she helped me get in touch with Lucasfilm PR, and she asked them actually to put me on the season 3, I believe it was, carpet. They had a premiere event in Los Angeles, and so there's the Ahsoka portion and then the Ashley, so getting to write about that was, it's weird. It should have been because Leia, I was scared to write. That's not, but Ahsoka, I'm like, I feel like in some ways this is my friend. And it's easy for me to be like, this is all the incredible things she's done. And also the voice actress who, brought part of her to life, broke barriers, and that she's like, hey, maybe girls want Star Wars t-shirts. So both sides of that character, the fictional character and one of the people who help, make her real, so to speak. Yeah, all kinds of feelings.
Well, I feel like, Ashley will always be forever tied to the character, much like how, Carrie is tied to Leia Organa, right? They're Ashley is always there. It's almost like Dave has to call her if he's going to do something really significant and be like, this is what's happening, by the way. I don't know that he ever asks permission, but he definitely tries to let her know when he can. At least that's how it seemed to be.
It does seem like that. And I agree. I think of them synonymously, like I do with Carrie Fisher and Leia.
Yeah. And that's really wonderful that we not only have these amazing characters, they're just amazing. All of the characters that I've seen that are going to be in the book, it will be out the week of the podcast. So that's great that people can pick it up right away and take a look at all these characters. But that also, there is passion of ladies behind them. The voice actors or the actresses or, sometimes comic writers, the story group. etc. There's lots of ladies who are behind these characters who have added to the universe over time.
Yeah, and also enthusiastic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, to be part of the universe. A few of them that I talked to about the book just couldn't be kinder about giving me their time to get a couple quotes. And yeah, there's a project Amy Ratcliffe, I believe is how you pronounce her name, has been doing called 365 Days of Star Wars Women, that highlights characters and behind the scenes. And like, that has been it's been a joy to see all those, characters, but especially the people who work behind the scenes who don't get as much attention highlighted.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, how this plays out into the interconnectivity of the Star Wars universe. Because in a way, because you're giving us an opportunity to look at these characters from a new perspective, like the handmaidens, we actually get to see them, learn a little bit more about them in a way that hasn't necessarily been said before. But it's like, that's the cool thing about Star Wars, is that we can choose a point in time and go back to it and be like, let's tell more stories there. And this book is almost like going across that for these like women.
It is very much a hope of mine that this book will inspire people who maybe haven't read some of the comics or books, and there's certainly a lot of material out there to be like, in one instance, like, I really want to read more about the specific character and I'm going to go find material. And like, also on the like bigger level, to just realize, wow, there are actually all kinds of Star Wars characters and stories. And that kind of hit home when I was researching this book, because I read as many of the novels as I'm pretty good at keeping up on the novels, actually. Mm-hmm. Comics, I try my best to keep up with, but I definitely get behind. And I made the mistake of not reading a lot of the stuff geared towards children, like the junior novels. And what an error, because there are great stories there too. So I really hit home, like, they're actually, if you want to read a story about a librarian, you can do that with Joe Castanew in the Darth Vader comic. If you want to read about Imperials, we have, I think, more kind of interesting, in-depth kind of Imperial stories that make you be like, okay, I don't agree, but I see where you're coming from. We have like a handful of those now where we didn't have any. So it's been a joy to kind of get back into and see like the pockets that Lucasfilm Publishing has highlighted to, like you said, kind of connect things, or to go deeper maybe when they don't have an opportunity to do so elsewhere.
And what I find is, like, there's, to your point earlier on in our conversation, the themes of Star Wars even come out in maybe something that's focused on an Imperial side, like Phasma, or in, Ken Liu's book, Legends of Luke Skywalker, which is, another junior novelization. But I think that even books that are aimed at kids, or are like, they say junior novelization, are actually okay for everybody. That's the point, just like this book.
Lena Graff is in this book, and she wasn't a character I was super familiar with because she's in the Adventures of Wild Space series, which is geared towards kids. And those are a lot of fun to read. They have a lot of cool characters, great droid, and they connect to the Bridgers from Lothal. So it's kind of fun too. Like, not only are you getting great stories, even if they're not written for your age group, but you're seeing like more like pieces of the big picture.
Like Kathleen Kennedy said once that Star Wars is one story.
Yes.
The art especially is beautiful. What I've been able to see kind of from, your con events, where they kind of showed some of the art up there, as well as, what's been posted online just as sneak peeks. I'm blown away. I'm hoping that eventually it comes out just as well as a print book, like just with the prints, so you could like frame them and put them on your walls, because I love it so much. Too. Did you want to talk about like the art and, what it was like to maybe see the visualization of some of the characters that have never been visualized before?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Seeing the art start to come in as roughs, and then like all the way up to seeing, final PDFs when we were proofing the last things, and then getting a copy. I just cannot, blown away. Like, I cannot believe how beautiful the art is, how the artist not only captured likenesses, but also like just evocative moods. And that's like magic to me, that you can look at, Sai Snoodle's page, keep going back to Sai, and like you can feel her sass. And I think everyone who worked on this is so gifted. And I love that Lucasfilm and Chronicle, they let them create in their own style. So I feel like it's not like any other Star Wars book I've seen, for sure, because it's, once you get to know the artists and kind of what their style is, I can look at a picture of Sabine Wren and I'm like, oh, Annie Stoll did that. That's Annie's style. And it's just incredible. Like I don't mean to be self-deprecating, but I know sometimes when I get like art up books, my first pass will be going through and looking at the pictures. Mm-hmm. And then I'll slowly go through and read as I have time. And this book, I would buy it 100% for the art alone. Chronicle, like it's gorgeous. I feel like it glows. The layout is amazing. And it's just, Lucasfilm and Chronicle really took point on gathering the artists and managing that whole, it had to be quite the organization process, but they were kind enough, my editor at Chronicle, to be like, all right, do you have any like story particular beats you included? Maybe something you wrote in a profile? Mm-hmm. Are there like really any iconic moments you want in? And they might have already been planning to do it, but I was like, if we could like show teenage Phasma, like that would be pretty cool.
Oh man, I heard that she was going to be in the book, and we get to see her original mask. Is that true?
You see her, the one in the book is her maskless.
Her maskless.
Yeah, so you go see Phasma's face, which is
what?
Pretty amazing. I was like, it's one of those things like, I'm just going to mention it and we'll see if anyone says yes. And then when I started getting there, I was like, oh, they said yes. That's so cool.
I loved that book so much. It was so, I don't know, unique from a style perspective, but it also felt like post-apocalyptic in that way, like that feel. Oh, it was so good.
Agreed. And it was like, and it's on like the setting in the background of the picture is Parnasso. So I'm like, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So great. And so as somebody who loves like seeing her, teenage Phasma, seeing teenage Holdo from Leia, Princess of Alderaan, seeing Sienna Ree, even though she's been illustrated in other things, like it was super exciting to see everyone. But as a huge fan of the novels, I'm like, I need to go look up these ones specifically first.
I'm very excited to see Phasma when my copy arrives. I'm just, oh yeah,
it's like great. Annie Stoll with that one, and it's excellent. They're all, people ask me, can you pick a favorite? I'm like, I cannot.
They're all my children.
They really are. I'm like, pick a page. That's how I'll pick a favorite. Close my eyes.
Thank you again for sharing your insights into all of this. I just, I really want to wrap up this conversation with just a question, which is, how do we encourage more women to get involved in creative ways in this fandom?
Oh, that's a tricky one, especially because when you look online sometimes, or if you make the mistake of looking at YouTube comments for something like Forces of Destiny, and if you don't know fandom, you're like, is this what it is all the time? That's a scary perspective. And once you're in it and you've been around for a while and maybe you've been to a Star Wars celebration, you know that those negative, toxic parts are unfortunately very vocal, but it's a pretty small percentage. So I certainly don't ever want to ignore that kind of toxicity, but I definitely do my best to be positive as much as I can so that people know Star Wars fandom overall is a fantastic thing. I've made so many friends through Star Wars, and I truly do feel like when I go to Celebration that I'm like, oh, I'm spending 4 to 5 days with my Star Wars family. And it's like, it's something I can't wait to do because I'm exhausted at the end, but every day is like this up, like you get recharged, so to speak. So I think one way to encourage women to get involved is I try to give advice for anyone. Like if anyone asks you about like, hey, how did you get into this? Or what would you recommend? I try my best to get back to everyone. I try to answer whatever questions I can, but I try to mostly like be kind, like be welcoming, never be a gatekeeper. Let people like the Star Wars they like. And if they don't like your thing, don't make them feel less for it, and just always be open, I guess. And hopefully if more and more of us do that, the women who are blogging, who are making, who are creating incredible costumes, like if we can, I guess, spread a little bit of the positivity and kindness within our own communities and with the women we know who are doing those things, whether they're in the 501st Rebel Legions or like Saber Guild, or whether they're writing for StarWars.com or like out there writing Star Wars reviews for comics on their own sites. Like share them, share their work, support it, tell them they're awesome. Always try to be there to like give any support you can, I guess.
Yeah. And I like to say, like, I got into Star Wars when I was really young, like 2 or something like that. Like I didn't have a choice. My dad put them on, and I like to say, like, just remember the wonder that you experienced when you first found Star Wars, like whatever time that was. It was for you when you found the Clone Wars. Like, just remember that, and remember that new person is experiencing that, and you can be their like guide into the amazingness of Star Wars, being like, oh, you liked that, why don't you check out Vader 2015? Right?
It's so fun when people are like, so the Darth Maul character, I'm like, oh boy, just wait, here you go. And the best, like, I love like when people do that with me. I've had people do that with me with other fandoms, like Doctor Who especially is one that comes to mind. So yeah, like that's a great way to just like remember your joy and help somebody elevate theirs. Don't poo-poo it. Don't be like, oh, you haven't read this book. No, don't be like that. Just be helpful and help them find like more of the Star Wars they will like.
Exactly. And you know, remember, everybody was new once to Star Wars, except for George.
Yes. Except he gets a pass.
He gets a pass, yes. And apparently, VIP tickets to every set.
No kidding. I mean, I guess fair that he gets
fine. The creator can go. Fine.
That was really fun to see him like on the Mandalorian set. I'm like, I'm glad that you're still checking things out, George.
Yeah, I'm happy he's still involved and like is treated, I would say, I don't know, better than when he sold the company, because I think that it's come around to be like, oh, okay, we should respect.
Yes.
You know, like, I was never like that. I've always respected him and everything. It's just, it's weird. It's weird, this fandom sometimes. I don't know.
Yes, it's one that's, to put it mildly, it's weird sometimes.
But I mean, we can be the positive force in our fandom. We can encourage others and we can support others and like things. We can like things.
We can be, I mean, I'm pretty sure StarWars.com already uses this tagline for charitable purposes, but we can be forces for change.
Yes.
StarWars.com, also known as Lucasfilm.
TM. It's okay.
Oh boy, what a day.
What a day. It's been a long day. So Amy, thank you first and foremost for writing this book and giving it the time that it needed to happen. I'm very much looking forward to cracking open my copy as soon as it arrives from Amazon. Like crack. No, I'm very much, I'm gonna dig into it right away. I'm gonna probably do the same thing and fangirl over all the pictures first. I'm sorry, but I will get deep into your beautiful prose as soon as I can.
Believe me, I totally understand. The pictures are going to keep you hung up for a while because they're so good.
Thank you for taking the time to come on the show. I know, you're very busy, so thank you. And if you would like to let everybody know where they can find you, that would be great.
Absolutely. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Amy_Peak. You can find my writing on StarWars.com and Nerdist.com. Thank you, Marie.
And that was our interview with Amy Ratcliffe. Thank you very much for listening. What the Force is available on iTunes, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. We're also available on YouTube. Our Twitter is WT Force Show. Our website is whattheforce.ca. We're on Facebook at What the Force Podcast. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to the next Woman of the Galaxy. Cheers.